Okay, first things first. This is not a sports game. So everyone go ahead and give me a sigh of relief. That's right, get it out of your system. Wait, what's that? You're saying that since this game includes card games and horse racing, it's still considered a sports title? Yeah, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that one. Especially since horse racing is not in this game, only betting on horse racing, which let me tell you is not the same thing. And I'm sorry, but blackjack and video poker is not a sport. Anyway, in a less confrontational tone, why did I decide to play this title? Well, for one, I never had before. And that's one of the main reasons for me doing this channel, is going through the history of these systems and playing games I never had a chance to before. And hopefully finding some diamonds in the rough, or simply getting to experience some great titles that I knew about but never had time or money for previously. Now this is not a diamond. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it's not even a cubic zirconia. But if you really like gambling, and I mean really like gambling, this might be the title for you. Let's take a look. Here's my copy of Caesar's Palace, and it's in pretty decent shape, with the exception of on the bottom corner here on the front, it's missing a small chunk of plastic, and the hang tab seems to have been broken off. The gold embossing is nice, I like that, and really makes the box stand out. One thing I found out when researching the game is apparently it had two releases, but really the only difference between the two is that the original release has Sega's own VRC rating on the cover, which you'll see here. And the second release was updated to show the ESRB release instead. I'm not aware of this happening with a lot of titles, and I think in this case it was done to try to aid sales because while Sega slapped their version of a PG-13 on it, the ESRB thought it was perfectly safe for 6-year-olds to be exposed to gambling and gave it an E for everyone. This is obviously the original release. Inside, we see the cartridge in pretty good shape, and the manual, which is a little bit bent on the bottom, but otherwise completely intact and relatively thick, which is nice because it allows for all the casino games to get a decent explanation without getting too into the weeds of in-depth strategy. It's a very good resource if you only have limited knowledge of some of the games. Now, on to the actual review. So first off, a little background about the title. Caesar's Palace was released by Virgin Games for the Genesis later on in the system's lifetime. I'm not exactly sure about the release date. Sega Retro has it as February of 1994, which is about 6 months after the Super Nintendo version. Either way, I consider anything past 1993 as a late release title, just as an indication of how good the graphics, sound, etc. really should be at that point. And based on that, this game is definitely not up to snuff. But that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. Older gamers may recall a very similar title for the original NES called Caesar's Palace as well. And while there are definite similarities between the two titles, this is not a port of the NES game. In actuality, this is a port of that game's sequel, Super Caesar's Palace, shortened to just Caesar's Palace for North America. This is the game I referred to as previously coming out for the Super Nintendo. I guess Nintendo of America wasn't too keen on having a gambling title thought of like all the other Super titles on their console, like Super Metroid, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Mario Kart, etc. Anyway, I'm not sure if the game was originally planned for the Genesis and Game Gear, or if it was just ported after they saw the sales of the Super Nintendo version. But here it is. When you first boot the game, you're presented with a pretty cool animated logo of developer The Illusions Gaming Company. Caesar's Palace was their first effort, and it shows. I researched their game library, and it definitely seems that this game was just released to get the company some funding, because they would never again make a game that wasn't a point-and-click adventure. And some good ones at that, like Scooby-Doo Adventure, which we'll review at a later date, Blazing Dragons, and the hard-to-find Duckman game. After the Illusions logo, you see what is probably the most visually impressive sequence in the game. The title screen. Yep, it really is pretty much all downhill from here. But I'm barely on page 2 of my script at this point, so let's drag this out a bit, shall we? Upon starting the game, you're given the option of either starting a new game by typing in your name, or entering a password to continue your last game, in the game's ATM menu. Yep, a 1994 release, and we're still doing the password thing. Ugh. If you do choose to continue with winnings from a previous game, you will use your disembodied, digitized hand to type in the password on a very slippery virtual keyboard, and probably screw up and have to retype part of the password at least a few times because of the quick cursor moves over the keys. Also, due to the angle of the keys and the buttons on the ATM and the large hand, there are times when it can be difficult to determine which key button you're trying to select. This is a pretty big disaster, and we haven't even started playing the game. If you don't continue a previous game, starting a new game nets you a cool $2 grand, and now your avatar, again a grainy, pixely, seemingly rotoscope man, begins his exploration of the casino. The concept for maneuvering through the casino is probably the best executed portion of the game. It actually gives the game a little bit of an adventure RPG feel. Unfortunately, there's no people to interact with or quests to complete. This is a bare-bones, strictly gambling experience, so I really hope you like Blackjack or Keno. Like, a lot. Having said that, let's explore what there actually is to do in the game. For starters, throughout the casino there are ATMs you can interact with, check your balance, get your password if you want to continue from that point, mess around with a sound test of the game's various sound effects, and buy scratch cards? Yes, scratch cards. If you ever wanted a virtual way to experience life as a degenerate gambler that hangs out at the Quickie Mart, well, here you go. For the cost of $100, you can buy one of 3 scratch cards from the ATM and start to scratch away. The scratch-off cards include a mock football game, a matching game, and a 3-card poker game. And each one of those you can either lose, win back part or all of your money, or win substantially more depending on the result. I don't think I find these a particularly good investment, but it's a nice diversion. Next, you have the 2 most common machines in the casino, the video poker machines and the one-armed bandits, aka slot machines. All the video poker machines that you can interact with are exactly the same, except for the amount of money you can wager/win. From $5, $25, $100, $500, down to $1 for those of you that have lost most of your money and need to try to rally. If you've ever played video poker, it's exactly like what you would expect. You can put up to 5 times the amount of the minimum bet to get up to 5 times the winnings, or just lose it all. Nothing special here, very bare bones. The slot machines range in bets with the same amounts the video poker machines have, but with the slot machines you at least have a little bit more imagination applied to them, in that they're split between 3 different types of games. One is a baseball themed game, one is a boxing themed game, and one is a jungle themed game. All of them allow you to put in up to 3 times your bet, which in turn raises the amount of winnings available, and on the jungle machine allows you to open up multiple lines to potentially win. This feels a little more well thought out and implemented, and while they're all slot machines, at least it gives you a bit of variety as you move around the casino. If the machines aren't your thing, the casino also has 3 of the most common table games, in craps, roulette, and blackjack, and each has different tiers of wagering, like the machines, and if you want to play at one of the high rollers tables, you have to cough up at least $1,000, or be turned away to come back when you have more money. In regards to craps, I must say playing this game was very educational as I never really had any idea how it worked. It's actually a very complex game, with tons of different betting options, and the game accurately replicates all of them. The animation of the dice rolling is very nice, and at times you can roll the dice as well, rather than just betting on other players' rolls. I actually think the craps table is probably the best implemented part of the casino. Not that that's saying much, but it does do its job. And if you're a craps novice like I was, I would definitely spend some time reading the manual, because it does an excellent job explaining your options and what the bets mean. Roulette works well too, in that you're presented with a full roulette table with all the normal betting options, and the ability to sit out spins if you want to see where the ball lands on a turn before wagering, to try to get the odds a little more in your favor. When the wheel spins, you'll be presented with a short animation of the wheel spinning, followed with a display of the possible slot scrolling by to build anticipation for where the ball lands at. Two drawbacks I can think of are that unless you manually write down and keep up with the spins, there's no indicator of the last 5-10 results like in other games. And the previous issue of the loose, disembodied hand cursor can make betting using the actual numbers on the table a pain to get correct, if you're going for a more complicated bid than just red, black, even, odd, etc. Finally, blackjack. Blackjack is disappointing. I haven't gotten to the overall graphics discussion yet, but suffice it to say that the blackjack table doesn't do that part of the game any favors. The game allows you to perform standard tasks like splitting or buying insurance, but you can't play multiple hands at once, and while you can double down, the game is not obvious about this option, and you might miss it at first. Like many other things in the game, it does its job, but it just seems cheap and rushed. Although, one good thing I'll say about the blackjack table is that when you go to hit or stand, the disembodied hand cursor will either point at the cards or wave the dealer off, which is a nice touch and representative of how you would play the game in an actual casino. The last two things that you can do in the game are play Keno or bet on horse races. I'm including them together because while everything else listed so far may have flaws, they can at least be somewhat entertaining. Keno in real life is a game for old people waiting to die, even more so than slot machines. If you don't know what Keno is, you can buy a ticket, wager a certain amount, and then select up to 10 numbers out of 80, and then depending on how many of those numbers match the drawing, you will win a certain amount of money. Think of this like Powerball with worse odds and payouts. There's literally no reason to ever play this unless you just want to set money on fire. Worse yet, the drawing doesn't happen right away. So if you buy a Keno card, you have to walk around the casino for a bit and play something else. And then when you're done, you'll be presented with the winning numbers, which most likely will be 10 you did not pick. The horse racing is almost as bad. In horse racing, you go up to a betting computer and have three options. You can look at the results of past races to see how the horses matched up against each other previously. You can check each of the horse's current statistics, or you can bet on the current race in an amount up to $9,999. The game does allow win, place, show, quinella, or trifecta bets, so that's a nice feature. But once you've put in your bet, like Keno, you get to just go aimlessly play something else for a while, and then you'll be presented with the results of the race. Can you actually watch the race? No. Not even a poor simulation of the race with super crappy graphics? No. Unfortunately, another place where the game simply could have used more polish. Now that we've covered all of what's available to the gamer, let's talk about how the game is presented. First off, it looks like crap. For a game that came out in 1994, really, this is the best they could come up with? As already mentioned, your character looks to be possibly digitized from a picture of a random guy, but at very low resolution. He looks like an extra from Pit Fighter. Worse, he has only about 4 frames of animation as he walks around the casino. The casino itself looks okay, if not a bit bland, but it seems like it'd be potentially one level, or even part of a level, in another game. It's very small, and you'll see everything the casino has to offer in a minute or so. The games themselves range from mediocre to cheap looking, as previously discussed. Similar to Risk, which we looked at back in episode 3, it seems thrown together to make a quick buck off the Caesar's Palace license. If you look at the credits, it appears the game had far more testers than programmers and artists, and that's never a good sign, especially for one as simple as this. The music isn't bad, what little there is. The intro track is actually pretty nice, but you only hear it before you enter the casino. Once you enter, you'll hear the same theme over and over and over again. Thankfully, it only plays when you're actually on the floor and not when playing games, so it's not constant, but still. While playing the game, I found out that the music was actually an early effort by the great Tommy Tallarico, which makes sense since it's a Virgin Games release, but that is a really wasted opportunity. Really? They couldn't get him to produce like 8 songs for the game at least? Have the game play a different track as you leave each game? Just another bit of evidence about this being a cash grab. The sound effects are okay, but nothing to write home about. Just of what you would expect in a game like game. With all that said, I'm giving the game a 2 out of 5. It's not an all-out disaster like Risk, but the cheap feel of the game combined with the lack of a battery backup doom it to mediocrity. The game does do what it sets out to do, which is give the gamer an assortment of casino games to play to try to earn money. But once you've earned a decent amount of money, which is pretty easy to do just by playing roulette over and over and re-entering your password when you lose, there's just not much to bring you back here. It's a good substitute for going out and losing real money, but that's about it.
Well, that one's over with. This is one of those games that I missed back in the day, and I'm okay with not having played it. I'd probably know more about gambling if I had, but I'm okay with my limited knowledge. Tune in next time when we take a look at one of many European exclusive Master System games I hope to cover here on Zilog and Moto. One you've probably never heard of. I certainly hadn't. And remember, whatever you play, have fun, and be excellent to each other. Later.